Welcome to the channel. I'm Stacy, and my goal here is to help you to play better and sound better in your worship services. Today, I'm going to share with you how I'm running 2 amps on my HX Stomp, how I'm using it currently, as well as how I anticipate using it with a couple of additions to the pedal board. The HX Stomp is a great platform for running 2 amps. You not only have room for the amps, but you also have room for some nice finishing touches as far as EQs, compression, and even a little bit of room for modulation depending on what you're using on your pedal board. First off, I'm running a noise gate on all my presets, and this one's set up at minus 48 decibels, but I will slide that down with single coil guitars until it doesn't buzz. That way I can send a nice clean signal to front of house. This one I've got 2 modulations. I have analog chorus and optical trem. Those are effects that I used on Sunday. The next block is the effects loop, and that's where I'm running the Jet Eternity Delay and Revelation Reverb. And then we're going into the 2 amps, and so what I've been leaning on lately is the Grammatico LG Bright, which is a Tweed Deluxe with its 1x12 cab, and then the Cali Texas Channel 1, which is like a Mesa Boogie Lone Star, which is based on a black panel Fender from the 60s, so I'm not sure which one, but it sounds great. And that one also comes with a 1x12 cab. And then we're panning hard left and right into a simple EQ to bump that holy mid-range. So this setup is pretty great. I'm able to get all the amp tones that I need. The simple EQ just kind of fills out a little bit of that mid-range to give me a little bit more fullness and a little bit more amp feel out of my playing. And I've been real happy with this setup. So one thing I'm anticipating doing is picking up a TC Electronic Plethora X1. And when I do that, I'm going to change some things because I won't have to have 2 modulations. I would just run my tremolo, since that is one that I run after drives. Chorus, flanger, phaser, all that stuff I would run in front of my drive section. And that Plethora X1 also has sub and up features, so I've got pitch options on that one. And I would change to using this setup right here. So running the same, the noise gate's the same. I've got tremolo. I was able to get rid of that before gain stage modulation, effects loop. And then what I added is the low high shelf. So this gives me a chance to bump a little bit more amp frequency in a way that's musical, that's doesn't sound EQ'd. It's just kind of just feeding the amp. And that's the reason I ran this in front of the amps, is to feed the amps some frequencies that it could work with as it's processing the bass and the treble. This amp has bass, tone, and treble, and they're all interactive. Similar with the Cali Texas Channel 1, I've got the treble pushed up pretty high on this one, and I don't tend to run presence. I like to just have more of a thicker high end, and presence can get a little bit brittle. So by pushing these frequencies, I'm pushing the 395 on the low end, and at 1.5 decibels, I was able to hear the difference, so I was happy with that. And I just kind of slid that frequency slider back and forth in the low area and just looked for something that seemed to add to my tone. I've got the low cut at 80, and I always do this on all my cabinets, and the high cut at 5K. You can see I've got it on that one, this one as well. On this one, I do have the level bumped a little bit because this amp isn't as loud. And so I don't want to push 5K because I'm not trying to push the highest frequencies that my amp's going to get. I brought it down to 4K, and probably even 3600 or 3500 might also sound good. And bumping that 4 decibels is where I heard a difference. And so what it does is it gives a nice sparkly high end. And like I said, it's feeding into the amp. So the amps are both processing these frequencies instead of the frequencies processing the amp. So here's how it sounds without it. Just run through a couple of quick chords. And with it. And then the same with the simple EQ. So I'll turn that off and then show you the simple EQ without that, and then with it. So all the changes are very subtle, but it's just those little differences that allow us to tweak the tones into kind of the space that our ears are looking for. And I really like the subtle changes that these settings gave me for my amp tones. So once I have that Plethora X1 on the board, the next thing I'd be interested in would be something to cover tremolo and those post-gain modulations. And I'd be looking at an H9 or an HX1. So if that happens, when that happens, who knows, I'll switch to this setup. So first we have the noise gate, and then the first block is empty. We don't have any DSP for anything new, so that's okay. First block with an effect is that low high shelf. Same settings as before. I got the same 2 amps, each with the same cab. I have the same split, A to the left, B to the right. And then I've got the simple EQ bumping that holy mid-range. And then the last thing I added, just to put the final touches, sending the most processed, proper signal that I can send to front of house, is the LA Studio comp. Now this is super subtle. These settings aren't extreme. And it's just adding a little bit of something. I've got the mix at 90. If I bring that down, I can. The volume does come up a little bit. I'll have to make adjustments for it. But we already went through the amp tones with the EQ adjustments. So here's how it sounds without and with that LA Studio comp. So you can hear it's very subtle. All of these changes are just subtle improvements to what I was already able to get out of those amps. If you run dual amps on your HX Stomp, let us know in the comments. What does your signal chain look like? I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, subscribe and hit that like button for good measure. There are a handful of downloads free for you in the description box below. You'll also find a ton of great song-specific resources, including HX Stomp and Helix presets, as well as song tabs, and most of those are in all 12 keys. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you in the next one.